Welcome back to PS I Love You. It's Chala here. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. I'm continuing the White Christmas theme that Scrap and Stamp has going for this month, and I created these gorgeous textured snowflakes. I actually created my own texture paste by adding some Nouveau shimmer drops, and I'll show you how I do that here. Let's first take a look at the stencil that I'm going to be using. It's a 6x6 stencil from Cartabella, and it is the Snowflake Fun stencil. I love, love, love the stencil. The snowflakes are so incredibly delicate. I love the variety of them, and I think that there is a lot that we can do with this. So I've got my texture paste, my A2 size card base. I'm just using some washi tape to hold down that card base on my craft mat. Now you want to make sure when you're using texture paste that you have some sort of craft mat and that you are going to be taking your stencil and your supplies over to a soapy sink right away to wash them off. You don't want this stuff to dry on there. So like I said, I'm going to secure this stencil down just with this washi tape, and that'll help it from lifting. You can use sprays if you like. I do have that Post-it spray that works really well, but the washi tape will serve its purpose today. So with my texture paste, I'm going to be adding this Nouveau shimmer drops, and this one is the, what is it? It's the glitter drops. Yeah, it just adds a really, really beautiful shimmer. It's a really fun way to be able to create your own texture paste. You can use colors, you can use I know some of the blue sparkle one is really pretty. I can't remember the name of it right now, but definitely try out different mediums to add to your texture paste to create your own colors and variety of texture paste. Yeah, you don't have to, buy every color under the sun. You can definitely create your own. So I am just mixing it up here on my craft mat. This is the Tim Holtz craft mat, and I just keep adding some until I get the amount of shimmer that I want. And I'm just doing that with my little craft knife or palette knife here. Alright, so once I get that all mixed up, I can start applying it to the top of the stencil and the card base. Now you want to make sure that you are applying it in a nice thin and smooth layer. That'll help it to dry evenly, and the thinner the layer, the faster it'll dry for you. So it's just kind of like icing a cake, which, admittedly I'm not very good at, but you can see the shimmer that's in there. It is just gorgeous. So just adding a nice thin layer. If you get too much on, just gently scrape it away. I made just enough to do this card, so you might want to actually err on the side of caution and make a little more than you think you might need. And I had a little goober there. Make a little bit more than you think you need just in case. That way you're not having to mix more up. Alright, so once I get this all smooth, sorry I'm kind of out of frame a bit there, but just gently gliding that palette knife along and taking off any extra. Like I said, I didn't really have any leftovers whatsoever. And then what I can do is lift off that stencil and reveal the beautiful snowflakes underneath. Alright, I set that aside to dry for a couple hours, and I've come back and look at this, all that sparkle. It is so incredibly pretty. I love the texture, and I think this is going to create a really great base. Look at that texture. Alright, so from here what I want to do is use these wonky stitch dies from the My Favorite Things. This is one of my favorite border stitch dies, and I'll just go ahead and run that through my Gemini Junior and cut it out. And I can just lift off this piece, and so it did flatten the texture just the slightest little bit, but when I remove this, you'll be able to see that it still has that great dimension to it. Okay, so you can still see here all the sparkle, and that it still has that raised texture. It is just so pretty. Now what I want to do is I want to adhere this piece down to an A2 size piece of foil cardstock. This is just a shiny silver foil cardstock that I have, and I think that will give it some great shine. And I'm just going to do that with my regular tape runner. You can use score tape if you like. Any strong adhesive will do. I just happen to have this handy, so I'll go ahead and apply that down. Now that mirrored cardstock that I have, I believe that is the Tim Holtz one that you can get from the Scrap and Stamp store. I'll make sure that I link everything over at my blog, so be sure to check that out. Alright, I'm just going to lay this down evenly, making sure there's enough of that shiny border on either side. And the old adage is if you get the first 3 corners even, the last one will lay down perfectly. Alright, and now what I want to do is adhere this piece onto my A2 size card itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and score this at 4 1/4 inches, and it's a 5 1/2 inch card base. Just using my bone folder to get a nice crisp score line on there. And then again, I will just line that up and use my tape runner to secure it down to the card base. So this is a really great, fun and simple card. Simple in the fact that it didn't really take me long to make it. The longest point of this whole card was just waiting for that texture paste to dry, which really didn't take long at all. I was able to just leave it and go do some chores and then come back and it was all nice and dry. I'm going to add these Studia Katia silver crystals to this. I want to add one to the center of each snowflake. So I'm just going to dump a few out. I'm also using my crystal katana. I really like this to adhere gems to my projects, or to pick up the gems. I just find it a little bit easier. I'll also be using glossy accents to use as the adhesive or the glue for these gems. I like it because it will dry clear, so you won't be able to really see it. And if it does show it, it enhances the shimmer of these little crystals. Alright, so I've gone ahead and laid those out. I've also gone ahead and done my sentiment. I had a piece of that shimmer cardstock from the blog hop just sitting on my desk, so I used that underneath, and then I used some gray cardstock and I heat embossed the sentiment. Now the embossing powder I used was a tinsel, and I think if I did this again I wouldn't use the tinsel. I would use just the regular silver embossing powder. I think it just had a little bit too much sparkle to it and made the sentiment a little bit hard to read, but it still turned out great. I also would probably rethink the position of the sentiment. So I started out here, I've got it adhered down. Where you see it here, I actually end up moving it because once I get these crystals placed down, it just seemed like it was missing something on the bottom right hand corner, but it's still beautiful. Look at the shine, look at the glitter, the sparkle, all the things. I just think it's a really beautiful, simple, white themed card. And I'll show you the photos here of how it all turned out after I moved the sentiment. Look at the sparkle on those snowflakes. Again, that's that homemade texture paste that we made, and then adding those little gems to it from Studio Katia just really finishes that card. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, as well as check out these other videos. I hope you have a fantastic week.